Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we've been talking a lot about, well, Jeffrey Epstein lately. Epstein. It's been a story that's been all over the news that we've been talking about for years, and we were called crazy for, as per usual. Lots of huge connections between Epstein and two sitting presidents, most notably Bill Clinton, who took 26 flights on the Lolita Express. No one's supposed to question that at all, of course, because, very innocent. He ditched his Secret Service a whole bunch of times to fly on the Lolita Express. I'm sure nothing went on there, considering, Bill Clinton is a man who has countless people, I think as many as 80 women who've come out against him since the 1970s. But no. It's nothing. It's all Donald Trump. While there are some questions there, I think we shouldn't make politics out of this, most importantly, because this involves the assault and the rape of little kids, children. So anyone that makes politics out of this, obviously you don't care about the children, you care about politics, benefiting your viewpoint. This is much bigger than that, and it actually plays into the whole idea of politics. These criminals that have these secret rings that we've gone over many times before. We'll go into this deeper, but first, let's focus on Bill Clinton here, taking all these flights on the Lolita Express. This is from May 13th, 2016, this article, and we've been talking about it since, I think 2015 or so, regarding Jeffrey Epstein. And recently, Bill Clinton says, I flew with Jeffrey Epstein, but knew nothing about his terrible crimes. Nothing at all. Hey, that's why you took a flight on a bunch of times, ditching Secret Service, on the Lolita Express. Lolita being kind of a play on Lolita the book and the film by Stanley Kubrick, which involves a grown man falling in love with an underage girl. Of course you didn't know, and you got on the plane and you took innocent trips with, Kevin Spacey, another stand-up guy. People like Harvey Weinstein and stuff. I'm sure you did nothing wrong, Bill Clinton. All is well, of course. Now, what I find kind of weird about this is, author James Patterson, he wrote a book on Jeffrey Epstein where he claimed that he was throwing the book at him. And then he goes on to write a book with Bill Clinton, and he seems to attack anyone that asks Bill Clinton about all these allegations of rape against him. So I gotta question where he's coming from there. Of course, Jeffrey Epstein is facing huge charges, and not good for him. Federal sex trafficking and conspiracy charges were unsealed in New York on Monday morning against Jeffrey Epstein, whose state plea deal in Florida in 2008 has been intensely criticized as inadequate. The indictment includes one count of sex trafficking of children by force, fraud, or coercion, which carries a maximum prison term of 40 years, and one count of conspiring to commit that crime, punishable by as long as 5 years. Epstein pleaded not guilty, and a hearing on his request for bail will take place next week. This is what prosecutors allege, and it shows what victims were initially recruited to give Epstein massages. He paid them hundreds of dollars and encouraged certain girls to recruit others in return for more cash, enabling him to maintain a steady supply of victims to exploit, prosecutors said, which sounds like mixed level or multi-level marketing on a much more sick scale. He would typically masturbate during the massages and eventually touch his victims' genitals with his hands or with sex toys, they said. Carrying on, it says, his victims as young as 14 were often particularly vulnerable to exploitation. When the alleged crimes occurred between 2002 to 2005, among them was the abuse of a girl the indictment refers to as a minor victim 3 at Epstein's Palm Beach house, according to prosecutors. Epstein asked minor victim 3 how old she was, and minor victim 3 answered truthfully, they allege. Prosecutors may have obtained evidence of new crimes with the arrest of Epstein. They said they searched his New York mansion and found nude photos of what appeared to be underage girls, where Epstein created a vast network of underage victims for him to sexually exploit in locations including New York and Palm Beach, according to the indictment. Prosecutors seek forfeiture of the Upper East Side townhouse they say Epstein used in the sexual encounters. The townhouse, said to be one of the largest in Manhattan, is at 9 East 71st Street. It is a 40-room structure built in 1932 in the French Renaissance style for Herbert Strauss, whose parents owned R.H. Macy & Co. Epstein bought it from billionaire investor and philanthropist Leslie Wexner. Through a spokeswoman, Wexner declined to comment. How, when victims arrived, they would be escorted to a room with a massage table and told to fully or partly undress. Epstein would then escalate physical contact, the U.S. said. He sometimes contacted the victims personally to schedule encounters and sometimes directed employees to communicate with the girls to arrange for future visits, according to the indictment. Who? At least 3 employees, as well as other unspecified associates, were involved in the recruiting and scheduling minors for sexual encounters with Epstein, the indictment says. The tabloid press called the private jet Epstein used to spirit celebrities such as Donald Trump and Bill Clinton to his Florida estate the Lolita Express. Now, folks, this is a man who, again, has had all this contact with all these major people that we know are, well, either alleged by countless people or just plain out guilty of doing absolutely horrible things. And there obviously is a ring involved here, and it makes you wonder who else is involved. As this Rolling Stone article says, Jeffrey Epstein, unsealed indictment alleges sexual exploitation, abuse of dozens of minor girls. And people knew about this for a very, very long time. He allegedly did things to underage girls in New York, at Palm Beach, on his island. And we will get into that island in a moment. But first, let's stick to these connections because, well, the government, the establishment in general, caters to these kinds of people, and they have for a long time. We have to look no further than all these other politicians that have been involved in this stuff, which we'll list in a bit here in the video. And on top of that, this notion that I do believe there's something to this because there's been said a couple years ago at least that there's cameras. There was a camera in the bedroom on the Lolita Express, and a lot of, just a theory of mine, I believe that there's a good possibility that they use this kind of stuff against politicians. They set them up with even a 17-year-old and claim they're 18 or something. In many cases, they claim that they're underage and they take them, but nonetheless, I'm sure they do this with like 17-year-olds and claim they're 18, or 15-year-olds and claim they're of age of consent or whatever. And then they catch them on video, and then they tell them what to do and what to say as a politician and basically own them. I think it goes without saying that this has been tried before. Now, Epstein tells judge he wants mysterious finances kept secret. And the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein, the alleged child sex trafficker and global jet setter of unknown wealth, told the court Thursday that they wanted to keep Epstein's mysterious finances under seal, and the Justice Department declined to take a position on Epstein's request because there's a lot to be said about who owns him, who does he work for? He was just a fund manager, or was he involved in this massive sex trafficking scheme of underage girls? I mean, there's a lot of evidence he's connected to everyone. And every time you see him with all these people, they're always like partying or something. All of these connections of his. They're always partying. There's always young women around. And it makes you wonder who he worked for, who he worked with. Because, of course, well, Acosta, who, by the way, gave Jeffrey Epstein this sweetheart deal and then ended up in the Trump administration soon after, which is interesting to say the least, claimed that Epstein belonged to intelligence. And as it says here, explosive enough to blow up a good portion of our system. As I said last time, this is a domino effect, and we're seeing it happen. According to investigative journalist Vicky Ward, who has been covering the Jeffrey Epstein case since 2003, Alexander Acosta, the former U.S. attorney who cut Epstein a sweetheart plea deal back in 2007, did so because he had been told to back off that Epstein was above his pay grade. And I quote, "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and leave it alone." Acosta, who resigned as Secretary of Labor on Friday, reportedly claimed. And carrying on, it says, and I quote, "The case is getting uglier and more weird the more we look into it," said Glenn Beck on Friday's radio program. Back in 2007, the charges brought against Epstein were brutal. I want you to listen to this quote. "The FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office determined that from 2001 to September 2007, Epstein had conspired to persuade minors to engage in prostitution, conspired to transport minors across state lines for the purpose of illicit sexual conduct, and recruited a minor across state lines to engage in commercial sex act." Despite what appeared to, at the time, to be a slam dunk case, the government chose to offer Epstein a plea deal, Glenn continued. "They slapped him on the wrist with a lesser charge and serving minimal time. Now, not only did this deal get him off easy, but it also immunized him and his co-conspirators from prostitution." And as it shows in this note here, from Vicky Ward's most recent article in which she wrote of Acosta, it says, "Epstein's name, I was told, had been raised by the Trump transition team when Alexander Acosta, the former U.S. attorney in Miami, who'd infamously cut Epstein a non-prosecution plea deal back in 2007, was being interviewed for the job of Labor Secretary. The plea deal put a hard stop to a separate federal investigation of alleged sex crimes with minors and trafficking." Is the Epstein case going to cause a problem for confirmation hearings? Acosta had been asked. Acosta had explained breezily, apparently, that back in the day he'd had just one meeting on the Epstein case. He cut the non-prosecution deal with one of Epstein's attorneys because he had been told to back off, that Epstein was above his pay grade. "I was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone," he told his interviewers in the Trump transition, who evidently thought that was a sufficient answer and went ahead and hired Acosta. The Labor Department had no comment when asked about this. And I quote, "I think what Ward wrote might be explosive enough to blow up a good portion of our system," Glenn said. Is this implying that Epstein was working with an intelligence agency as some sort of asset? Was this sex ring being used as blackmail material for powerful people all over the world? Is somebody in the government using and protecting someone like Jeffrey Epstein, using these girls to gain power over very powerful people all over the world? I think this is a very reasonable question to ask, because obviously there have been a lot of huge connections to these big name people on Wall Street, big financiers. They say that Epstein was a fund manager, but also, like, where does one have time for this? He's going to his island and on this plane with all these big names constantly, with parties going on and underage girls. He's named his airplane the Lolita Express, insinuating, some kind of underage or young girl kind of exploitation happening on that airplane. I mean, a really bad name for a plane, by the way, if you're trying to get away with this stuff. Epstein has been begging the judge for house arrest at his $77 million, 21,000 square foot mansion with artificial eyeball wall. Is he going to get away with it again? Is he going to go free? I don't think so, actually, at this point, because he's so in the news. They got to throw him under the bus like they've thrown a lot of people in the past under the bus when they are not good assets anymore. But I have this weird feeling at this point, if this page loads, it's a New York Post article talking about how locals call Jeffrey Epstein Caribbean Retreat Pedophile Island, but the New York Post doesn't seem to want to load for me right now, so I'll let that sit for now. But here's an image of the island. Was he a fund manager? Is there a sex ring involving underage girls that involves the most highest up elite, and it's starting to come out, so they're throwing people under the bus? Is he going to testify against people? Why is there a giant statue of Moloch, like at the Bohemian Grove, on the roof of this weird temple on his island? What's going on, guys? What's going on? It's just getting so crazy. And obviously it's getting to that point where you can't turn away. The mainstream media is all over it. You cannot avoid this story. It's everywhere you go. It's a story we've been talking about for years, and we were called crazy. Like I said, conspiracy theorists. Our videos were demonetized as hate speech and inappropriate and all that kind of stuff. This video will definitely be demonetized as well. I mean, because YouTube likes to promote underage girls dancing around in bikinis and stuff with millions of views. And they don't take those videos down, they just get rid of the comments, but then flag all these videos that talk about how horrible pedophilia is, like Dan Dix of Press for Truth, who did a video on pedophilia and how horrible it was, and they removed the video. They took it down because they thought it was inappropriate. Anyway, NPR article, new accusations for Epstein as some in South Florida say good riddance to Acosta. Of course, Acosta has resigned. And a lot of people said he wouldn't, and he went on and on and on to try and save his reputation the other day. I don't know, one way or another. I don't know. There is some shadiness to the fact that he was Trump was on the Lolita Express, and then you have Acosta enter his administration after giving this non-prosecution plea deal to Epstein. Something strange about it. But, of course, that was many years ago, so it's hard to tie. It's just weird. It's weird how all these connections keep adding up. As this Sun article says, reign of terror, pedo billionaire Jeffrey Epstein acted just like Jimmy Savile when preying on underage girls, victims' lawyer says. And isn't that interesting? Again, that comes back to the notion that the establishment allows for these people to get away with this stuff. As it says here, like Mr. Savile, Mr. Epstein was using his wealth to try and make himself look good when the dark reality was he was abusing young girls for many years. And, of course, Savile got away with it for many years. The BBC knew well about it and just let him go and tried to cover it up, just like many in Hollywood knew all about Harvey Weinstein and all those people involved, and Kevin Spacey. But they didn't say anything because, opportunism, which is absolutely horrible. And then you have to tie these people associated with Jeffrey Epstein together in one way or another, because you can't avoid the obvious. Two sitting presidents, one, Bill Clinton, having gone on the pedophile Lolita Express 26 times, ditching Secret Service a whole bunch of those times, and the fact that he and his wife, he has been accused of rape all these times, about 80 times now since the 70s, and Hillary Clinton, freeing rape victims like Kathy Shelton, who was raped at the age of 12, and laughing on tape about it back in the 1980s. Really, really horrible. We all remember Kathy Shelton from the last election, as Trump brought her out with Juanita Broaddrick, our former Wham guest, to that press conference before the debate. But also other Clinton connections, like Anthony Weiner, who was involved, was married to Huma Abedin and had kids with her, who had access to secret intelligence documents and was working with, Hillary Clinton, and how they were best friends. It's weird how, Bill Clinton could be friends with so many pedophiles and so many horrible people, like Dennis Hastert, for example. Dennis Hastert, who was basically he was sentenced for raping a whole bunch of little boys. And, of course, it plays perfectly into politics because the most psychotic people end up wanting to become politicians in the end. But, you combine that, and then Anthony Weiner, and then Jeffrey Epstein, and then, you have people like Alan Dershowitz, who's now kind of switched over to the Trump side, but is heavily associated with Jeffrey Epstein as well. Kevin Spacey, you have Harvey Weinstein, you have all these people. And people wonder, and all these rape accusations against Clinton. And people wonder why Clinton keeps being brought into the news. Why is he surviving this whole Me Too thing? Where some people, like Morgan Freeman, he's like complimenting women on the way they look, which, creepy old man kind of thing. But they try to destroy him. But then Bill Clinton's like accused of raping all these people, and I mean, also his wife's freeing pedophiles and laughing about it. They're friends with all these horrible people. I mean, come on, guys, it's ridiculous. How is it? There's definitely a ring going on, and we've heard all the stories about Bohemian Grove in the past as well. Giant statue of Moloch there, cremation of care ceremony, uncovered by Alex Jones back in the early 2000s on video. Really creepy stuff. Oh, it's just some fun in the woods, in the California redwoods. Well, if that's what you call fun, dressing up in a robe and doing weird satanic rituals, or Hillary Clinton saying that she's sacrificing a chicken to Moloch in her backyard in the WikiLeaks email release. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But as we were talking about Dennis Hastert, and then you go on to like R. Kelly, he's been arrested again, and they found over 20 underage sex tapes exposed with help of ex-staffers. And this all brings me to my final point, the Franklin cover-up. Remember that? Good chance you don't, because no one talks about it anymore, but it was a controversy that involved countless government officials, senators, congressmen, etc., involved in just countless kidnappings of children and rape and sex rings and even sacrifice to an extent, and trading these children around. And look, again, you know, they're going to try and threaten to take our channel down here at WHAM for talking about this stuff. These are children that are getting raped and murdered, and you talk about it, and it's what they call lateral violence. By talking about it, you could cause violence. What about the violence that's happening? If some idiot wants to do something, I say they shouldn't. Don't go and hurt innocent people. Don't go and make accusations without proving blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, is that more important than exposing the fact that children are being molested and pushed around these sex rings and sex operations, where we have people like Bill Clinton being involved, and Donald Trump has flown on the plane. He said Jeffrey Epstein was a nice guy. Again, I'm not letting politics play into it, because you shouldn't, because children and the assault of children play into the story. When that happens, well, I don't even believe in politics to begin with, but throw the politics out the window, because this is about individuals, children, the most vulnerable people being molested. So again, Bill Clinton involved with Jeffrey Epstein, along with Alan Dershowitz and all these people. And we keep looking to politics to decide whether it benefits our viewpoint or not to call out certain people. It's happening in Hollywood. It's happening in sports. It's happening in, the music industry. It's happening in business and finance for sure. And it's definitely happening in politics. And when you have a monopoly on force and you have the ability to enforce your rule over other people, it's much more harder to call out the people responsible for these horrible things. And this is starting to come out. It's getting really big, but are they just going to throw him under the bus? Is he going to end up dead before he testifies? Because he probably has some information that people might want to look at. But there must be a reason why they're throwing him under the bus, because the media doesn't usually do this unless they have a reason to benefit from it as well. Or it just became too big that they could not hold back the flow of information any longer, which could be the case, because for a long time, only independent medias were properly actually reporting on this story, and now it's acted like, oh, this is a new story. There are books written about it years ago, and it's been talked about for over a decade. I've been talking about it for many, many years, and now it's suddenly not crazy conspiracy theory anymore. Now it's, well, no, it's Clinton. No, it's Trump. No, it's Clinton. No, it's Trump. How about, no, it's the children that are getting raped and brought to a pedophile island where they are being enslaved near a giant temple with a statue of Moloch, the satanic angel god thing. I mean, does anyone else find this not completely crazy? And now we're just supposed to look at this from a political standpoint that's even crazier and shows how cultish and crazy it has gotten. You have to, again, it works with politics because government is organized crime, so it makes sense that they are involved in criminal activities like this kind of stuff. It's time that we throw politics out the window and start looking at individuals and look at what's happening to people and how horrible it is and how there are children that are at risk. And Jeffrey Epstein is a pig and a disgusting human being. Was he an intelligence asset? If so, was he a part of an intelligence sex ring operation that's supposed to, quote unquote, find the bad guys, like, the FBI arming and funding terrorists is supposed to find the terrorists, or running guns through the CIA into cartels is supposed to find the cartels, when it ends up killing countless people, and in this case, leading a whole bunch of children to be molested. I mean, I can't go without actually mentioning as well Sacha Baron Cohen, who I might not be a huge fan of, but he, for his show, This Is America or something like that, he went to a Las Vegas hotel and asked the concierge, as a rich guy, in disguise and everything, for underage kids, and they were like, oh yeah, we got that, we have to make sure that they don't get hurt or else they might tell and all that kind of stuff and blah blah blah, we just have to scare them out of saying things. And that was on tape, and the government that claims to care so much about these people didn't want to really do anything about that. So again, it just goes to show this criminal racket continues to get worse, and they're picking on the most vulnerable people, and it's the most disgusting thing you could ever imagine. So we need to keep this story going and keep it at the forefront of the news, or else what are we doing? What are we doing to save all these kids who are being molested and put into these rings? And we see it in Canada as well. Native Americans being put into these sex ring operations after they're stolen from the government via CFS or CPS in the States and put into these hotels and then fed to pimps and everything. It's just a horrible thing, and it's happening a lot. And the very rich and powerful are the most involved in this. Not generally, but I mean, overall, there seems to be a tilt towards the rich and powerful when it comes to these horrible pedophile rings, not just some pimp on the street. So anyway, I'm ranting. I'm going to go into this further in the future. We're following the subject. There's so much news, it's impossible to keep up with. Huge testimonies, hours and hours and hours of testimonies, and there's still a case that's going through and everything, and lots of charges, and possible, is there going to be more plea deals, or are there going to be testimonies against other people involved in this? We'll find out very soon. So anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to, say, Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And of course, we got events coming up, so make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there, and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge, so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.